what I learned from traditional calligraphy, where you pick up the pen and it's thin, and then you put it down and it's thick, and I applied that to lettering, and I just went at it. I didn't care if it looked like a correct font. I just started creating, these cool mashups of lettering and illustration. And it was just for fun, it was just experimental. But chalk is such a cool medium that I just kept at it, and I started incorporating some of that traditional lettering as well. So these 3 pieces have a lot of really traditional calligraphic forms. And just to remind you, this is on like a 4-foot, 5-foot wide chalk wall, so this thing is like huge. And I just photograph it and print it out. So all of this just kind of on the side. I barely did any lettering for Hallmark officially. I like to think that people are out there reading about, my story and like, oh, she worked at Hallmark, that's how she did it. It's like, no, like I was a web designer and I was bad at it, so I just did lettering on the side. So it's not like this magic wand hits you in the face when you work at Hallmark and that's what bestows, talent upon you. You have to actually practice. Like I said, on the side, I kept doing stuff. I would write on my toaster strudel in Nutella, and I literally printed that picture out and put it in a portfolio when I applied here at Berkeley. And I was like, can you pay me to do this? I want to write on stuff with frosting. And they were like, yeah. So I did that for a while when I started here. And these are literally posts that went out for Blue Bunny. When you get to working with food and whatnot, they become more forgiving. So I look at this and I know that the letter forms are wrong. I know that there's parts of the pieces that just aren't where they're supposed to be. They're not as thick or thin as they should be, but people kind of chalk it up to the jitter of the sprinkles. So I really enjoy food and its kind of forgiving qualities. But I do like boiling it back down to the really traditional calligraphic forms. So I'll do a piece like this that's really based on very traditional calligraphy, even though it's made out of seeds. So that was me talking a mile a minute about my background. But I kind of want to get into not necessarily calligraphy, but some tricks that you guys can use if you want to try hand lettering. When I think about traditional calligraphy, this is my face. It's really hard to like get up to a pad of paper and take your ink and your nib and you put it on the paper and you're bad. Like it's just scratchy and it won't move across the page and the ink is blotting places that it's not supposed to. It's not fun to be bad for months at a time and then slowly get better. Like that's not fun to get into. So I want to help you guys cheat as much as possible. Because otherwise you'll be like me and have carpal tunnel one day because you're practicing too much. I'm going to break it down for you, and this is all in these 6-page handouts that are in front of you. I'm going to send out like a PDF for you guys in the back. It's lots of guidelines and whatnot that you can use later, so don't sweat it that you're not able to check out now. It all starts with a horizontal line on the page, most importantly being the baseline. If you don't put a single stroke on the page, I mean, you're already starting off on the wrong foot. So I'm just such a huge fan of starting from structure and then breaking it out from there and really getting loose and crazy. So I put these lines on the page, but then you have, in really traditional calligraphy, a certain slant. If you want to get technical, it's 55 degrees. So when I look at somebody's piece of lettered art, and I see that there are certain letters with the wrong angle, it's like I can pick those out, and I can say, well, you weren't paying attention, or you didn't work the foundations of your work. So sometimes you can look at an old piece and say, okay, all but one letter is at the right angle. That's why it looked funny. That's why I couldn't tell what was wrong. But it's the subliminal, feeling that you get from it. So I normally fill a page with these vertical and horizontal lines, and then I just go at it. But in my mind, I'm thinking about these forms. So the larger ovals are the letter forms themselves, and then I think of these little gaps between them and try to make sure that they're even. It gets tricky with certain lowercase forms like letter R and letter S. Kerning is really weird. But for the most part, if you lay in something like the word lovers here, and it's a little hard to see, but it'll become clearer in a sec, you can see that each one kind of lays in one of those large ovals. Like I said, R and S are both just having their own party on the right side there. But in traditional calligraphy, one of the simplest things you can do to fake it is add thick and thin. So anywhere where I would have picked the pen up to move upward on the page is thin. Anywhere where I'm pulling it down is going to be thick. So you can scribble out some calligraphy, add some thick and thin, and it'll have that vibe of ink and nib, even though you've done it with a pencil, like I've done here. So when you pull those lines off, you start to see that it's pretty well spaced. It's not ideal, but I've got these little bubbles that you can kind of see inside the letter forms. And I want to talk about how when people add thick and thin, if they're not used to the foundations of calligraphy, they'll do something like this. So this is the letter E, and on the right, it's flooded with thick in places that it shouldn't be. And those kind of imaginary bubbles start to tell me I need to pull it off, I need to help with that legibility by keeping that thick edge almost like a straight line against that side, if that makes sense. If you're having trouble, if you're like, why do things look muddy, why can't I read this? This printout is actually in that packet, and I think just going over those 5 or 6 pieces and applying that to your work can help realize like what's that subliminal thing that's affecting my work. Like I said, I started with oblique pen work, and this is just ink, nib. That nib follows that angle. It's really tedious. It's not fun because it's just you're really stiff and you're having to hold a certain way. I highly recommend if you want to be in lettering for the rest of your life to practice this for years on end because it's super beneficial, but it's not fun. Like that is my face when I'm doing it. So I would say if you just want to kind of hit the ground running and then apply those rules, I would say get some of these brush pens. I hate telling people like this is the pen that'll change your life, but this one on the left is the one that'll change your life. So buy it. It's a Pentel brush pen, and what I love about these pens is that the ink is in them, so it's like a cartridge. And what that does for me is it breaks this barrier where I don't have to think about getting my materials together. I just pull a pen out of my pocket and I can practice. I can go like right away. So the one on the right, they make in black and brown and every color in between, but it's just great because they have these synthetic bristles that get really tiny and thin at the tip, and then you can push them down and get really thick and juicy and all that. The other secret that people seem fascinated by are these water pens. So you guys have in front of you a lot of watercolor, and you'll eventually have water and inks. But when I'm trying to, like for Vanity Fair Lingerie, I do all of their lettering with a water pen because I'm lazy or efficient. I highly recommend grabbing a water pen if you're into kind of watercolor lettering because you can take the pen, stick it onto the pigment directly, and it automatically like fills it with water. And the water is like a one-way directional thing, so you can clean your brush when you're done and just stick it in your pocket and go back. So water pens are awesome. Okay, I'm talking 8 million miles a minute, but now we can start to get into some practice work. If you guys want to go ahead and pass out the water and ink, what we're going to start with is that traditional form. So I know it's really fun to get experimental and do crazy stuff, but these foundations are so awesome and important that I just want you guys to pick a word. It could be your last name, it could be a favorite word. It's going to look really weird because they're going to write it 8 times, and I can't even look at the word lovers anymore because I wrote it 20 times the other day. But choose a word that's maybe 6 or more letters long, and go back to that set of guidelines. So make sure that you're laying down the word on its baseline. The lowercase letters are hitting their X height. Your ascenders and your descenders are hitting equal lines across, and all that stuff. Because as soon as we lay down this really traditional one, I want to go through and break every rule one by one. I think when you look on Pinterest and you see these typographic images and you're like, why does that look weird? And you just don't know why. It's because they're keeping with the rules 90% of the time, and then like 1 or 2 things will be wrong. And it's kind of like you have to have this balance of like how much of the rules are breaking and how far across the page. If you want to bust out that one template with all the diagonal lines and all the flat lines, you can actually slip it under a piece of paper and use it kind of as a background tracing. Oh, and in that packet I included an alphabet. It's one of a bajillion. Like you can look up Edwardian roundhand, you can look up like all kinds of various scripts that you're into, and just have one in front of you. I mean, just look at what's out there and do what they're doing. Get that muscle memory for what an actual alphabet should look like, and then put it away and do your own thing. Yeah, you can use, there should be a brush in your envelope. You can maybe start with pencil. and put that line work down. So I'll go back to that one. So you won't have the ovals on your page, but that's just kind of a thing I keep in mind. Lay down your line work maybe with pencil, and then lay in your thick and thin with that watercolor brush, because you can get that diversity with the thick side of the brush and then the thinner point. Oh, sorry, I'm awful. Use your watercolor brush.
So what are we supposed to be doing then?
Yeah, I mean, there's extra paper. If you guys are worried about messing up, I mean, just try to like use a little section of the paper and then move on. Use a different section and keep trying. So just grab your brush and you've got those lines underneath that first sheet of paper. So just lay in, even if it's like a single mono weight version of your name or something, just lay it in like a thin line. And we'll go through and do like 20 other pieces, so don't fret about this one because it's just the first of a few. Okay, so we have tons of paper. So you know, don't feel like it's a precious gem that you have to hold on to. And if you guys are running out of paper, just raise your hand. We'll run out and grab you.
I was like, how can we do that?
I almost hate sometimes how I'm into calligraphy and it's so feminine, and I get told that some of my stuff is super feminine, and it's frustrating, but what I really love about traditional calligraphy is that process of thicks and thins and the slant of your letters and the use of a baseline and a cap height. All of that's applicable to any other typeface that you want to create, any other hand lettering that you want to experiment with and create on your own. I wasn't any good at any of it until I had the foundations, and then suddenly I went back to it and I was like, oh, okay, it all makes sense, and it's just so enriching. So I highly recommend, even if you're a guy and you're super manly, to maybe play with calligraphy. picture for you guys of my handwriting because it's garbage. And I had a person ask me like how it feels to have my handwriting as like look like a font. And I'm like, no, I had to like really deliberate on that to make it look decent. Like my handwriting looks like a really bad doctor. Okay, I want to move on to the next one, and I did these so quick, and I know it because I've already been doing this, but I kind of like that aspect of brevity because then you're not thinking as much about it and you're just getting ink on paper. So for this first one, if you want to try like just a mono weight and just like lay it on the page like you're a second grader and you're just writing something in that really basic cursive. That's how I started thinking about calligraphy when I got into it, is just to get those ups and downs and just get letters on the page. So when you look at this slide here, it has all the rules done to a T. Like obviously not the greatest because it's in pencil, but it has the angles that it should. The letter forms are all at the right height. They're all on a baseline, and everything's in place. But what I want to do is one by one break them. So like I've kind of talked about this, how when you look at a piece and you just know that it's not right, it's probably because they're breaking like the letter L is tilted here and it shouldn't be, and the other one has too much fill on the back end, and they're just mixing it up in a little bit, I don't know, the wrong way. So instead of breaking a few of the rules all over the place, I just want to break one rule at a time. So the slant of the page could be completely different. It could be vertical. So your horizontal lines, everything else stays the same. Your thicks and thins are exactly where they should be, but your angle on that page is vertical. So I have a whole booklet of guidelines, like the one that I gave you that's slanted, and I have them at every single angle. So anytime I need to just have a guideline, I can pull one out that's at the right angle. So this one, I just had one that was going up and down. You could do the opposite. You could slant it so far over. And this is just using like a crummy, I think it was like a felt tip pen or like a one of those brush pens. But that extreme angle does something else to it. But everything else is in place. So there's thicks and thins on the O and the E that are where they should be. The X height is perfectly normal. Nothing's bouncy, nothing's crazy. But that single angle change, if you see the difference in attitude of those two pieces, it's insane. It's mind-blowing. That's just lettering. So I would highly recommend taking that. I think one of the other pages is just horizontal lines, and just experiment with that angle that you're writing on. So all of these letter forms are following an angle. It doesn't matter what it is. This one breaks it entirely, so all of the letter forms are following a different angle. But that's the thing, is the consistency of breaking those rules. So it's not just that one or two letters is off. I went ahead and just eschewed all of them as fast as I could. And it kind of looks like loners, but we'll just go with it in the slide. So take that same word that you were writing earlier and just quickly get it on the page as like a really extreme slant. Get it on the page as really vertical. about the supplies then. So we have those red biggie pads. I recommend those. That's what I was taught how to do calligraphy on. So ink and nib with like the really expensive walnut inks and those great nibs. I used cheap red biggie pads. So grab those because you can go line by line and fill a page, tear it off and throw it away. And do another one. So Biggie, it's a brand that kind of works with ink and nib. I don't know many others that won't bleed on you, so just try stuff out and see what kind of paper works for you. But that thinner stuff that allows the guidelines to show through, but also works for the ink that you're dealing with, can be kind of tricky to find. I talked about the brush pens and whatnot, but I know Hallmark artists that will draw things in pencil first and then go down and lay it in an ink. So I mean, guidelines and doing pencil first are not off limits. It's all part of getting that form down the way that you want it to go on paper. I think of other supplies. But if you guys have any questions about supplies or anything in general, just let me know. So one thing you could try, I tried to keep in all the rules in my head while I was doing this, but I held the pen really funny. And it was on this weird kind of tracing paper, so it wiggled on the page. But those flourishes are kind of like in black letter where you have like certain flourishes on certain letter forms. And I was like, holy shit, like I can do a whole alphabet off of that. So just holding the pen in weird ways can give you the weird flourishes like on the V and the S, and you just get these weird little additions to the letter forms, but still trying to keep in mind like, you know, there's a similar angle to all these letters. Well, there's no baseline because I ignored it. But just having a different grip on your pen could do something pretty crazy to a pretty mono-weight piece of lettering. Yeah, so you've got the brush for the watercolor. You should have some inks in front of you. The reason I kind of threw out crayons and markers as objects is markers, I mean, that's as good as a felt tip pen that you could buy in the store. And it doesn't matter what the tool is, it's how you put it on paper. A crayon, it's got kind of those two bevels on it. You could actually create like a dual stroke piece of calligraphy, I mean, with a 2-cent object. I'm a huge fan of not worrying about what the material is or how fancy the tool is. It's what you do with it. I mean, you could chop that crayon into tiny little pieces and make lettering out of that, for goodness sake. So maybe play around with what you've got in front of you, because you probably wouldn't pick up a marker or a crayon normally to do something like this. But I guarantee you I could pick up that crayon and make it do thick and thin. So try it. Sounds so authoritative, like try it, do it.
Do it. And like all the watercolors that are there, like just share, make friends.
So the one that's on the screen now is all I ever wanted when I went to Hallmark Artists was to tell me how to do this. I wanted to do like bouncy. And they were all like, I don't know what you mean. And so I realized like later all I needed to do was take all of those rules, keep them in place. It has the right thicks and thins, it has the right, you know, the X height is kind of variable because it's bouncing on that baseline. But if you just pull them up and down off the baseline and keep all of the rules the same, it can be pretty. And what you see on Pinterest a lot is them breaking this and 4 other rules, and you're like, this is bad, and this is why. This is one of my favorite lettering styles where all the rules are in place, but the one that's broken is where it lays on that baseline. Yeah. There's so much paper. Please take more.
Here. That's a
Scribble like a single letter on one and then throw it away, and then be like, I need more because I'm doing so much art.
Just one. I do have a couple more styles to get through. Does anybody want me to write their words the whole time just to get it on paper? Yes. Somebody raise your hand. Okay. Is that one that's standing in front of you? Okay. I'm going to take this to my voice.
Yes, where are you from? From Mexico. I got Maryland. It's a fun game. I like that. What's your It is a beautiful thing. Right? That can be fun too, but. You guys get together. Ariana, I think she's back. She went to the gallery and got married. And she was off in her wedding. That's where she was.
Does anybody want ours? Okay.
Like some very exotic locale. I don't know how it went. And if she got married too, while she was there, but some man. So I used to work in this ridiculous thing. That would never happen to me. I'm sorry, there's just no way that would happen. Right, meant to be. I mean, I can't go that route. There's no other. Hey, yes.
I'm gonna yell at you. I had a Hallmark artist tell me one time to take my least favorite letter and make it my most favorite letter. So I try to do that anytime I'm thinking, why does this look like garbage? Well, it's probably a letter that I don't like, and I need to make it my favorite letter. So one trick with this that I didn't write in your booklet, that vertical line at that 55-degree angle helps inform some of the other angles on your page. So when you have a crossbar for a capital T, it could go perpendicular to that 55-degree angle. So your letter T would kind of swoop down that way. And that balance between where your crossbars are and where that vertical angle is can inform the whole thing. And that includes the letter R. So my letter R's look like grade school R's for a year and a half. And I was like, okay, every letter is beautiful, but R is a piece of garbage and I don't want to deal with it. So I did what he said and I made it my favorite letter by just practicing and seeing what was out there. And I started realizing that it put an angle on it. And that angle counters the angle of your letter forms. So just like those crossbars, just like the flourishes on these S's, it's countering that 55-degree angle. And I'm going to stop molesting this board. So some of these don't do it as well as others, but if you see this one, the R is horizontal because the vertical angle is straight up and down. So it looks a little less grade schoolish because the whole thing is grade schoolish. This one here, the angle of the R just kind of swoops over at the opposing angle of that really extreme slant. This one's all over the place because it's bonkers. This one's not perfect. You can see the R and the S, the swoosh of the S don't quite match angle-wise. But anytime you've got that very, very vertical angle on your page, that R can contrast it. The crossbar on your T can oppose it. So that's a cool trick for the letter R because it's a beautiful bitch. Another trick you guys can do if you want to try a new style, take all of the rules and do them exactly as you should. Your angle is spot on, your letters are nice and open, but go thick on the upstroke and go thin on the downstroke, just because you can. I had never done it before, like the other night when I was putting this presentation together, and I was like, I wonder what it would look like. And it's a style like I could see leveraging for other stuff. It's not perfect, it's the first time I ever put it to paper, but that concept of the L, the upstroke of the L being thick and everything else being thin, breaking the rule enough times across the page, I feel like almost makes it look okay. So it's just fun to experiment with that specifically. There was an artist who drew everything like 2 millimeters tall. He had these books full of lettering that was all 2 millimeters tall. His handwriting was just like microscopic. Try it tiny. Like just write it tiny, blow it up, and then trace it and see what that does. Because your hand is going to make a totally different mark when it's at a different scale. Try blowing it up. Try doing like 1 letter per page, or giving yourself a huge piece of newsprint on the wall and just going at it with those calligraphic angles and see what that does. I want to write some more stuff. Does anybody want something? Okay, I saw the green shirt.
I should have sat next to you and then you could have up your shit. I got it. We're good. I'm so sorry. Have a good day. Have a great weekend. You got it. And Casey has my number. If you guys need anything, just let me know. Casey's got my number, so just call me.
Thank you so much.
I took the spaces between the letters, I made the thick parts really thick, and I filled the kerning. Again, just playing around until something sticks, and you're like, okay, I can roll with that style, I can do something out of this. The very last one is hold the pen, so if you normally hold a pen like this, and it's nice and straight up, hold it like that, and like use the side of the brush, and so like really give yourself that texture. I can't remember what type of paper this was. It was probably just cheap tracing paper or vellum. You could probably create that kind of grit on any paper. It's a lot about the dryness of the brush and how fast you're going and things like that. And the fact that I held it like right against the side like I was buttering toast. So now that you all know that I'm hungry, there's a kind of cool thing that we can do next, which they gave you a few supplies, an unsharpened pencil, and a bit of aluminum from a tin can. This can be really tricky, but we could possibly make some of these pop can nibs, is what I've heard them called. So the brass one on the screen now is a legit one that you buy in the store. What you're seeing is a folded piece of brass, whatever material it is, and that holds the ink like a well, and then it seeps through the two panels that are just touching, and it creates this panel of ink for you to slide across the page. So the silver ones are the ones made out of soda cans. You can also buy roof flashing from Home Depot, and it's apparently thicker and stronger, and you can cut it with, you know, professional shears and actually get some denser aluminum to work with. But the interesting thing about this tool is that even a crummy piece of aluminum from a can that you fold in half, if it snaps and you have to sit there and hold it and pinch it while you're using it, that can actually be an effective tool to create your more interesting lettering. So there are artists out there, this is not my work, I wish it was, there are artists out there who will take cardboard and fold it in half, and that fold is all the well that you need to hold some ink and get it on the page. So these kind of folded pop can tools are really, really interesting because they're following those same rules. The angle of their letter forms are all the same. They're playing with the thicks and the thins. But by using a different tool, they're getting like mountains of texture that you just can't get from a brush pen, at least not in this way. The other cool thing is that you're kind of combining chisel tip with this brushy nature. So I highly recommend playing with the tools, not only with like crayons and markers and things like that, but just fold some weird shit in half and dip it in paint and gray and see where it takes you. Because I mean, I'll make stuff out of food and whatnot, but just experimenting with what is your quote unquote ink can be really, really cool. Again, not my work on this screen because I'm not good at this stuff, but it is super fun to just play with it. I can crank out maybe a word or two and be like, that's pretty. Now I'm going to go be good at something else because this is hard. Oh, and if you notice, on these kind of pop can nibs, they fold them to where they're touching. So that well is kind of barely big enough to hold some ink, but that edge where they're touching, this one here, that's the edge that you actually write on. It can be the super thin part, it can be kind of against this curve where you're pressing that into the page. But you know, get some ink in there and then just scrape that across the page, hold it a different way, but apply those same foundations of the slants of your letter forms and it
Oh, got it, you're good?
You know, pretty cool.
Do I need some tape? Hey, yeah. Hey Megan, can you come back around with some more paper? Sure. Now you Does anybody need paper over here? You got it. Sure.
Any more paper?
Do you guys need more paper as well?
If you guys are interested in making these at home, it can be super helpful to curve this edge a bit. I'm yelling at you again. So this edge here, the reason that's curved is because that'll drag on the page and it'll pick at your paper and it's really hard to write with. So just a little bit of a curve there can help it just go smoother across the page. You're welcome.
Are you making a nib? Oh, okay. Are you making a nib?
Anybody out here need more paper?
She's like, I'm ready with mine.
I think we have just a few more minutes. Does anybody have any questions or want me to come by?
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Well, you guys need some tape.
Yeah, I'll be right back. Sure, Windex will take her right off, right?
because there's thousands of you. So we're handing out special paper. It's magic and it's going to make you really skilled. No, it's just really thick paper, so it works well with ink. It kind of works well with any material that's in front of you, like watercolor. But I want, should I like have them like number off? 'Cause then you get one of each.
Yeah.
Okay, so starting with you, maybe raise your hand and go 1, 2, 3. So I want everybody to find yourself a number. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Say it out loud so that your neighbor can hear, and I want everybody to get a number. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I kind of want them evenly distributed, and I'll let you know what that 1, 2, 3 is in just a sec. It's like you're in middle school again.
1,
You guys are bad at middle school. 3,
1.
Everybody with the number 2 gets the ampersand. You could they do a plus sign or and? Okay, so plus sign, ampersand, and then number 3 you're doing the word design. So all 3 badass options, but 1 you're doing coffee, 2 you're doing ampersand, and 3 you're doing design. Write these out. We're gonna mash them up together and post about them. So please just have fun and do something cool. Have fun and be awesome. sorry that my butt's in your face. I have sticks and pins and not having. So, never the words or design. You can see it's shaky. I'm not even right now. It's it's easier to fill in the sample than it is in the sample. So this, you're going naturally from so if it goes upside down, suddenly you're looking from the opposite angle. And it's easier. The line is already out. Like there's and it even works really. So I actually did a whole wedding so as long as you have an understanding of the people who have an understanding like where these photos go. I've done it for 2 months. That's a little weird. But if I was something I see some copies and some ampersands and some designs, and I love you guys for doing that because it's going to be fun when we get them all together. Okay, so I have just a couple more slides. I didn't have a good transition, so here's Paul Red dancing. I just wanted to give you guys like some tips. It's hard to throw all these rules at you and hope that any of it sticks or that any of it's relevant because it might not be relevant to you. My lettering is one way. There's 10,000 styles that you could actually put on paper. So all I can really say is practice the basics a lot. Find a foundational piece of typography or lettering that you like and practice it. Get really good at it, and even if something like the traditional calligraphic forms that I used to do, I don't really do really ink and nib calligraphy anymore. It just informs so much to have a strong foundation. So practice, write the whole Harry Potter spell book, write the music that you're listening to, write whatever you want, just get it on paper. And you should be throwing away like hundreds of sheets of paper at the end of the year, or recycling them like a good person. If you don't know what to do, give yourself a box to fill. So when I was at Hallmark, I did the little signs for treats, but I was frustrated. I was like, I have no range, these are all the same style. How do I give myself breadth while not feeling like I suck? Because it's hard to complete a piece and look at it and be like, great, it's no good, why did I even bother? So I would come in every day and write the day of the week on the top of my to-do list. And it was a small enough thing that I could make Monday look different. I could make Tuesday look different from the day before, and everything kind of started to have this range because it was just the smallest project. So giving yourself that box to work within actually gives you the ability to have range within there. So I saved all these, and these little pieces that I clipped off the top of my to-do list at the end of the week actually led to projects for Hallmark. So I wasn't a lettering artist, but I had these pinned up on my wall. So I had like an ocean of samples that I was capable of making. And they could say, okay, I want that one on this page. So give yourself something to do, a little tiny thing every day. I got really into illustrating flowers at one point, and so every day I'd choose a different flower, and I'd just do it on 3x5, and I'd tuck it away into a drawer. And it's like those recipe cards. You end up with 50 of them at the end of the year if you do one per week. So do that, and you'll be kind of surprised with how much you can create with not a lot of effort. And then the last thing, my favorite gift of the entire presentation, lettering is kind of this amazing dancing beast that you just want to be on, and you're like, I want to be with you, why can't you embrace me? So that's really a hard kind of hump to get over. I feel like chalk was that hump for me because it was a medium that was finished for me. All I had to do was apply some lettering and the chalk made the texture. The chalk made all the grit and kind of genuine quality that I wanted out of my work. So just kind of keep at it, and one day it'll maybe dance with you and you'll look cool too. So that's the end of my gifts / presentation.
So feel free to keep going. Feel free to get out of here if you need to get out of here. Feel free to grab some tea and coffee if you want to do that. We have the space till like around 10, so just be conscious around 10 to start moving on with your day. But if you finish your little coffee and designs, you want to bring them up, we're going to try to snap a bunch of photos of those. And then I just want to say thanks again to all our sponsors, Carlisle 5 Solutions, AIGA Kansas City, Accelerator, and the Red Street for helping make this happen. And again, a huge thank you to Barclay for letting us invade their space. We'll be announcing next month's event probably around May 1st, or the first week of May, so be on the lookout for that. And then just, if you guys all want to join me in giving another round of applause to Nate. Thank you for joining us. Follow us on all the social networks. We're just reading some of what you guys have been doing, and we'll take pictures of all the stuff that you guys are doing right now too. So bring them on up if you've done them, and we'll take pictures of them. And again, thank you.